The massive space station floated in the darkness like a metal city among the stars. Inside, alien beings from across the galaxy gathered in the Great Council Chamber. Their voices mixed together in dozens of different languages as they discussed the most dangerous planet they had ever found. Vextai looked at the holographic display floating above the center table. The planet Kythera spun slowly, showing red and black storms swirling across its surface. Numbers and warnings flashed around the image in bright letters. Every single reading was in the danger zone. Class 15. Deathworld, Vextai said to the other council members. His blue skin rippled with concern. We have never seen anything like this before. The gravity is 3 times normal. The atmosphere will eat through most metals in hours. The surface temperature changes from freezing cold to burning hot without warning. The other aliens nodded their various heads in agreement. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few glowed with their own light. But they all shared the same worried expression as they looked at the data. The electromagnetic storms disable all technology, continued Vextai. The plant life attacks anything that moves. The animals are the size of spacecraft. Even our strongest robots last less than a day on that world. Then we mark it as forbidden and move on, said Counselor Zephys, her tentacles waving dismissively. No sane species would attempt to land there. That is what I thought, Vextai replied, until I received this message. He pressed a button and a new hologram appeared. It showed a human face with dark eyes and black hair. The image flickered, slightly from the long-distance transmission. This is Captain Jiho Park of the Human Exploration Corps, the recording said. We have reviewed your classification of planet Kythera and formally request permission to conduct a survey mission. The council chamber fell silent. Several aliens looked at each other with expressions that ranged from confusion to disbelief. They want to go there? Asked Zephys. Voluntarily. It gets worse, Vextai said. They sent a full mission proposal. 5 humans, 1 ship, standard equipment. They plan to stay for 3 months. An alien with 4 arms threw all of them up in frustration. These humans have been in space for barely 100 years. Do they not understand what Class 15 means? I sent them additional warnings, Vextai explained. Detailed reports of what happened to our probe teams. Pictures of the damage to our strongest battle armor. Even recordings of the sounds that come from the planet's surface at night. What did they say? Vextai activated another recording. The same human face appeared, but this time he was smiling slightly. Thank you for the additional information, Captain Park said. It confirms our analysis that this will be an excellent training opportunity. We have a saying on Earth, if you are not living on the edge, you are taking up too much space. We look forward to exploring Kythera. The silence in the council chamber lasted even longer this time. Finally, Counselor Zephys spoke. They think this is training? Apparently so, Vextai replied. I have studied human psychology reports. They seem to view extreme danger as something to overcome rather than avoid. Their history is full of explorers who deliberately went to the most dangerous places they could find. Their history also shows that most of those explorers died, pointed out another council member. Yes, but the ones who survived discovered new lands and made their species stronger, Vextai said. Humans seem to accept this trade-off. The debate continued for hours. Some council members wanted to forbid the mission entirely. Others argued that humans had the right to make their own choices, even stupid ones. A few suggested sending a rescue fleet to wait nearby. In the end, they approved the mission, partly because humans were officially members of the Galactic Council and had certain rights, mostly because they were curious to see what would happen. 3 days later, the human ship arrived at the station. It was smaller than most council vessels but looked solid and well built. The name Resilience was painted on the side in simple letters. Captain Jiho Park came aboard with his team. He was tall and lean with steady eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. Behind him walked 4 other humans, each carrying themselves with the same calm confidence. This is my crew, Jiho said as they gathered in the briefing room. Dr. Nara Kim, our xenobiologist, she studies alien life forms. Nara was shorter than the captain, with bright eyes that sparkled with curiosity as she looked at the alien council members. Daeho Choi, our engineer. He keeps everything working. Daeho nodded politely. His hands were already moving as he examined the station's technology with obvious interest. Sumin Lee, our security specialist. Sumin stood perfectly still, but her eyes constantly scanned the room for potential threats. She moved like someone who had trained for combat her entire life. And Taeyang Song, our medic. Taeyang smiled warmly at the assembled aliens. His calm presence somehow made everyone in the room feel more relaxed. Vextai looked at the 5 humans and tried to understand how they could be so calm about their approaching doom. Captain Park, I must ask one final time. Are you certain you understand the dangers of Cathara? Jiho's smile never wavered. We understand perfectly. That is exactly why we want to go there. But why? Vextai asked. Your species is young, growing, learning. Why risk everything on a world that will probably kill you? Because that is how we grow, Nara answered. Every species that joins this council has already reached its peak. You have comfortable worlds, safe technology, predictable lives, but humans are still climbing. We get stronger by facing things that challenge us. And if the challenge kills you, then we will die learning something new, Daeho said simply. But we probably will not die. Humans are very good at adapting. The final preparations took another day. The council provided the humans with the best protective equipment available, though everyone expected it to fail within hours of landing. They also gave them emergency beacons that would call for help if activated. As the Resilience prepared to depart, betting pools opened throughout the station. Most aliens wagered the humans would last less than 3 standard days. A few optimists gave them a full week. Only one alien, an old trader who had met humans before, bet they would survive. The full 3 months. You think they will actually make it? Vextai asked him. The trader's 4 eyes twinkled with amusement. I think we have no idea what humans are capable of, and I think we are about to find out. The Resilience undocked from the station and turned toward the red star where Cathara waited. As it disappeared into hyperspace, the council members returned to their duties, already planning the rescue mission they were sure they would need to launch soon. None of them suspected that the EU rescue mission would never be necessary, and none of them could imagine what the humans would find on the deadliest world in known space. The Resilience shuddered violently as it entered Cathara's atmosphere. Red warning lights flashed across every control panel in the cockpit. Jiho gripped his captain's chair while the ship bucked and rolled like a wild animal trying to throw them off. Shields are failing, Jiho shouted over the screaming alarms. His fingers flew across the control panel, trying to reroute power from non-essential systems. Whatever is in this atmosphere is eating through our protective barriers, like acid. Through the main view screen, they could see Cathara's surface approaching fast. It looked like a nightmare painted in red and black. Massive storms twisted across continents that glowed with volcanic heat. Lightning that burned green and purple split the sky in patterns that hurt to look at. The landing computers are not working, Sumin reported from her station. The electromagnetic interference is too strong. We will have to land manually. Can you do it? Jiho asked Daeho. The engineer's face was covered in sweat, but he nodded. I can try, but we are coming in way too fast and at the wrong angle. This is going to be rough. Nara looked up from her science station with excitement that seemed completely insane given their situation. The atmospheric readings are incredible. The chemical composition should not allow for any life at all, but the sensors are detecting massive biodiversity. The electromagnetic pattern suggests some kind of organized activity, almost like, save the science for later, Jiho interrupted, as the ship lurched sideways. Everyone strap in and prepare for crash landing. The Resilience screamed through clouds of acid rain and toxic gas. Daeho fought the controls while pieces of the outer hull began to peel away. Below them, the landscape rushed up with terrifying speed. They were heading for what looked like a forest. But as they got closer, the trees revealed their true nature. The massive trunks were made of some kind of metal that gleamed silver and red. The branches moved on their own, reaching up toward the falling ship with obvious intent. "Those trees are trying to catch us," Taiyang yelled. "Not catch," Suman corrected, grimly. "Impale." Deho fired the emergency thrusters at the last possible second. The ship bounced once off the ground, flew over the grasping branches, and crashed into a clearing beyond the metallic forest. The impact threw everyone forward against their safety harnesses. Metal screamed and sparks flew as the Resilience slid across the rocky ground before finally coming to rest against a boulder the size of a building. For a long moment, the only sound was the settling of twisted metal and the hiss of escaping gases. Then Jiho's voice cut through the silence. "Sound off, is everyone alive?" "Alive but not happy about it," Deho groaned, checking his instruments. "Main power is offline. Life support is running on backup batteries. We have maybe 6 hours of breathable air inside the ship." "Several broken ribs on my end," Taiyang reported, already reaching for his medical kit. "Nothing that will kill me immediately, but I need to set them properly before they get worse." "Weapon systems are damaged but functional," Suman said. "External sensors show movement all around us, big movement, and it is getting closer." Nara was practically bouncing in her seat despite the crash. "This is amazing. Look at these readings. The local life forms are incredibly complex. Some of them show signs of collective intelligence, and the mineral composition of the soil suggests—" "Nara," Jiho said firmly. "Focus. We need to survive. The next few hours before we can appreciate how amazing this place is." The captain stood up carefully, testing his body for injuries. Everything hurt, but nothing seemed broken. "Deho, what can you salvage from the ship?" "The fabrication unit is intact. I can use it to make basic tools and equipment if I can find raw materials. The emergency shelter should still work, and we have enough food and water for about 2 weeks if we are careful." "Suman, what is our defensive situation?" "Bad," she answered honestly. "The ship's hull is cracked in multiple places. We cannot seal it properly, and whatever is out there knows we are here. I count at least 12 large life forms circling our position." As if summoned by her words, something roared in the distance. The sound was deep and angry, like a volcano learning to speak. It was answered by similar calls from other directions. The humans were surrounded. "Right," Jiho said with the kind of calm that came from years of dangerous exploration. "We set up the emergency shelter outside. Deho starts salvaging what he can from the ship. Nara begins analyzing the local environment to figure out what we are dealing with. Suman establishes a perimeter and identifies immediate threats. Taiyang gets us patched up and ready to move if we have to." "And what will you do?" Suman asked. Jiho smiled grimly. "I will make coffee. We are going to need it." The next few hours tested every skill the humans had learned in their years of exploration. The emergency shelter deployed correctly, creating a small but secure bubble of Earth-normal atmosphere. Daiho managed to salvage most of their essential equipment before the ship's power died completely. Taiyang treated their injuries with calm efficiency, but it was the world outside that demanded most of their attention. Nara's analysis revealed that Cathara was not just dangerous, it was actively hostile. The metallic trees moved with purpose, trying to position themselves to attack anything that came near. The ground itself was unreliable. Sometimes solid rock and sometimes liquid mud that could swallow a person whole. The atmosphere was worse than the council reports had indicated. It did not just corrode metal, it seemed to learn how to corrode it better. Equipment that should have lasted days failed in hours. The acid rain fell in patterns that suggested intelligence behind its timing. And then there were the predators. Suman counted at least 20 different species within sight of their shelter, each one perfectly adapted to hunt and kill in this hellish environment. They ranged from pack hunters the size of earth wolves to solitary giants that looked like living mountains with teeth. "The interesting thing," Nara reported as night fell, "is that nothing has actually attacked us yet. They are watching, testing, learning about us. But they are not charging in for an easy kill." "Maybe they are waiting for us to weaken," Suman suggested, "conserving energy until we become easier prey. Or maybe they are smart enough to be cautious about unknown threats," Jiho said. "We did just fall from the sky in a metal ship. From their perspective, we might be the predators." The first night was a symphony of horrors. Things with too many legs scratched at the outside of their shelter. Creatures that sounded like screaming children called to each other across the wasteland. The ground shook regularly as something enormous walked nearby, each footstep like distant thunder. But the humans slept in shifts, maintained their equipment and planned for the next day. When dawn came, if the bloody red light that filtered through the toxic clouds could be called dawn, they were still alive, still organized, and still determined to explore this world that wanted them dead. Taeyang heated water for coffee using a small portable stove that burned fuel made from processed atmospheric gases. The familiar ritual of morning preparation helped everyone feel more human despite the alien environment. "So what is the plan?" Daeho asked, sipping his coffee and watching something with tentacles and fangs prowl around the edge of their camp. "We learn," Jiho said simply. "This world is testing us. Let us see what it takes to pass the test." Nara grinned with the kind of excitement that had gotten humans into trouble throughout history. "I love this job." Outside their shelter, Kithara continued its deadly dance of predator and prey, storm and stone, acid and fire. But for the first time in millions of years, something had landed on its surface and survived the first night. And that something was not planning to leave anytime soon. 3 weeks had passed since the crash landing, and the humans were not just alive, they were getting better at staying alive. Their camp had grown from a single emergency shelter to a small collection of structures built from salvaged ship, parts and materials Daeho had learned to extract from the hostile environment. The morning routine had become natural. Taeyang checked everyone for new injuries or signs of atmospheric poisoning. Suman reviewed the night's sensor logs to track predator movements. Daeho worked on improving their equipment with each day's new discoveries about local materials. Nara continued her endless documentation of everything that wanted to kill them. And Jiho planned their daily exploration routes with the careful precision of someone who knew that one wrong step meant death. "The acid rain is getting worse," Daeho reported, holding up a piece of metal that had been perfectly smooth the day before. Now it looked like something had chewed on it. "But I think I have figured out why. It is not random corrosion. The atmospheric chemistry changes based on what materials are present on the surface." "You mean it adapts?" Nara asked, looking up from her morning data review. "The environment actually learns what we are made of and develops specific countermeasures." "That is exactly what I mean. Our ship hulls were standard galactic alloy. The atmosphere figured out how to dissolve that specific mixture within days. But these local materials," he held up a tool he had fashioned from a metallic tree branch, "they resist the acid because they evolved here." Jiho nodded thoughtfully. "So the planet is not just dangerous by accident. It is designed to test and eliminate anything foreign. Which makes our survival even more interesting," Suman added. "Because we are definitely foreign, but we are still here." She pointed to her daily predator report. "The hunting patterns have changed. 3 weeks ago they were probing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. Now they seem to be studying us. The pack hunters follow us during daily exploration but stay exactly 50 meters away. The ambush predators position themselves where they could attack but do not actually strike. Maybe we have proven we are not easy prey," Taeyang suggested. "Predators do not waste energy on dangerous targets when easier food is available." "But that is just it," Suman replied. "There is no easier food. Everything on this planet is a predator. The food chain here is not a chain at all. It is more like a war where everyone fights everyone else, all the time." Nara suddenly looked up from her datapad with bright eyes. "Say that again. Everything fights everything?" "No. The part about it being a war. What if that is exactly what it is? Not random evolution, but organized conflict with specific rules and purposes." She activated the holographic display that Daeho had jury-rigged from their salvaged equipment. The image showed a 3-dimensional map of the area around their camp, with different colors representing various life forms and environmental hazards. "Look at this pattern," Nara said, manipulating the display to show movement over time. At first glance, it looks like chaos. Predators moving randomly, storms appearing without warning, ground conditions changing unpredictably. But if you look at it over weeks instead of days, the pattern became clear. What had seemed like random events were actually connected in complex cycles. Storms drove certain predators to hunt in specific areas. Successful hunts changed the chemical composition of the soil, which affected plant growth, which altered atmospheric conditions, which influenced the next storm pattern. It is a test, Jiho said quietly. The entire planet is one massive ongoing examination. Everything here has to constantly prove it deserves to exist. And the things that fail the test? Suman asked, though she already knew the answer. They die, Nara confirmed. But the things that pass become stronger, smarter, more adaptable. This is not just evolution. It is accelerated evolution under extreme pressure. Deho was staring at the display with the expression of someone making uncomfortable connections. If that is true, then what does it mean that we are adapting to? The question hung in the air like the toxic atmosphere outside their shelter. Because Deho was right. They were changing. All of them had noticed it but had been too busy surviving to discuss it openly. Their reflexes were faster. Their endurance was greater. Their ability to process and respond to multiple threats simultaneously had improved dramatically. Taeyang's medical scans showed changes in their brain chemistry, their muscle density, even their bone structure. We are evolving, Taeyang said simply. 3 weeks of constant life or death decisions, and our bodies are adapting at a rate that should take generations. The question is why, Jiho said. What is causing accelerated adaptation? And why are we the first species to experience it, instead of just dying like all the others? The answer came that evening, quite by accident. Daiho was working on their communication array, trying to boost its signal strength enough to contact the Galactic Council. The modifications required him to completely rewire the antenna system, using components salvaged from both their ship and local materials. When he activated the new array for testing, it immediately picked up something unexpected. Not the distant signals from Council space, but something much closer, something broadcasting from Kithara itself. Is that? Suman started to ask. Communication, Nara finished, her voice filled with wonder. Organized, complex, intentional communication. There is intelligent life on this planet. The signal was unlike anything in the galactic databases. It used frequencies that most species could not even detect, carried on energy patterns that required sophisticated technology to generate. The mathematical structure was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Can you decode it? Jiho asked. Deho worked through the night, using every code-breaking technique he knew and several he invented on the spot. By morning, he had managed to extract fragments of meaning from the alien transmission. It is not a language in the normal sense, he explained to the gathered team. It is more like instructions, blueprints, genetic templates. Someone or something is broadcasting detailed information about how to survive and thrive on Kithara. Broadcasting to who? Suman asked. To anyone smart enough to listen and strong enough to implement the changes, Nara said, understanding dawning in her eyes. The planet is not trying to kill us. It is trying to teach us. Everything we have faced, the environmental hazards, the predator challenges, the material science problems, they are all lessons. Lessons in what? Jiho asked. How to become something better than what we were when we arrived. The signal grew stronger as they continued to decode it. It led them toward the mountain range they had observed in the distance, where strange lights danced among peaks that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. The path would take them through the most dangerous territory they had yet encountered. But they were no longer the same humans who had crash-landed 3 weeks ago. They were faster, stronger, smarter, and more connected to each other as a team than ever before. Most importantly, they had learned to think like Kithara itself, always testing, always adapting, always becoming something more. Well, Jiho said, as they prepared for the journey toward the source of the signal, we came here to explore. Let us see what we are really exploring. Behind them, their camp stood as proof that humans could not just survive on a Class 15 Deathworld. They could make it home. Ahead of them, The mountains held answers to questions they were only beginning to learn how to ask. And somewhere in between, 5 humans who had volunteered for an impossible mission discovered that impossible was just another word for interesting. The journey to the mountains took 5 days of traveling through terrain that redefined the word hostile. They crossed valleys filled with crystalline formations that sang in frequencies designed to shatter eardrums. They navigated canyons, where the walls moved to crush anything passing between them. They survived nights when the very air became predatory, trying to invade their lungs and rewrite their genetic code from the inside out. But with each challenge, the humans adapted, faster. Their bodies moved with fluid efficiency that surprised even them. Their minds processed multiple threats simultaneously, without conscious effort. Most remarkably, they had begun to work together with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. "We are becoming something new," Taeyang observed during a rest break on the 4th day. "Not just individually, but as a group. I can anticipate what each of you will do before you do it." "The planet is teaching us more than survival," Nara agreed. "It is teaching us integration, how to function as a unified organism while maintaining individual strengths." The signal from the mountains had grown steadily stronger as they traveled. By the 5th day, it was clear enough for Daeho to extract actual meaning from the transmissions. "It is a greeting," he announced as they made camp within sight of their destination. "Someone knows we are coming. They have been monitoring our progress and preparing for our arrival." The mountains themselves defied explanation. They rose from the landscape like organic architecture, their surfaces covered in patterns that pulsed with bioluminescent light. The rocks seemed to breathe. Waterfalls flowed upward in spirals that created geometric shapes in midair before falling back down as glowing rain. "Those are not natural formations," Suman said, studying the peaks through their enhanced optical equipment. "Someone built those mountains, or grew them, or sang them into existence." The approach to the main peak was protected by defenses that made the rest of Cathara look gentle. Mechanical predators the size of aircraft hunted in coordinated packs. The ground itself became a maze of shifting passages that led nowhere. Storms of pure energy swept across the landscape, dissolving anything they touched that was not properly prepared. But the defenses did not attack the humans. They tested them. Each challenge required the team to demonstrate something they had learned during their weeks on Cathara. The mechanical predators could only be avoided by moving with the fluid coordination they had developed. The shifting maze could only be navigated by using the pattern recognition skills they had gained from studying the planet's ecosystem. The energy storms could only be survived by wearing protective gear made from materials they had learned to synthesize from local resources. "It is like a final examination," Jiho realized as they approached the entrance to the mountain's interior. "Everything we have faced was preparation for this." The entrance itself was a marvel of engineering and art. Massive doors made from living metal stood open, revealing a passage that glowed with warm light. Symbols covered the walls, not carved into them but growing from them like luminous plants. "Welcome," said a voice in perfect English. The humans stopped, weapons ready, but not raised. The voice had come from everywhere at once, resonating through the mountain itself. "You have traveled far and overcome much to reach this place," the voice continued. "We have watched your progress with great interest. You are the first to complete the trials in over 3,000 years. "Who are you?" Jiho asked, his voice steady despite the impossible situation. "We were once called the Kethmori. Now we are something more, as you are becoming something more than what you were when you arrived." The passage ahead of them filled with light, and figures emerged from the illumination. They moved with grace that seemed to defy gravity, their forms shifting between organic and mechanical in ways that were beautiful rather than disturbing. They looked like living art made from metal and crystal and energy, shaped into forms that suggested intelligence and purpose beyond anything in galactic civilization. The one in the lead stepped forward and spoke with the voice that had greeted them. "I am Cathara. I was the last of my people to undergo the transformation. I have been waiting to meet others who could walk the same path." Transformation? Nara asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming caution. From what we were born, to be to what we chose to become, Cathara replied. My people were dying, not from disease or disaster, but from stagnation. We had created perfect worlds, perfect technology, perfect safety, and in doing so, we had stopped growing, stopped adapting, stopped truly living. She gestured to the mountain around them, and the walls became transparent, revealing vast cities carved into the living rock. Beings like Cathara moved through spaces that blended architecture with biology, technology with art, individual achievement with collective purpose. So we built Cathara, she continued. A world that would force us to grow or die. A testing ground that would push every limit we thought we had, and then push beyond those limits to find new ones. The trials we faced, Suman said, understanding beginning to dawn. They were designed by your people. By us, and for anyone else who might one day prove worthy of the lessons we learned through suffering and triumph. Cathara's form shifted slightly, becoming more recognizably humanoid as she spoke. We seeded this world with every challenge we could imagine, then subjected ourselves to those challenges until we became something capable of not just surviving them, but mastering them. How many of your people made it through the transformation? Taeyang asked. All of us, Cathara replied, because those who could not adapt chose to give their energy to those who could. Death became not failure, but contribution to the success of the whole. She led them deeper into the mountain, through chambers that showcased the full scope of Kethmori achievement. They had not just survived Cathara's trials, they had learned to reshape reality itself through focused will and advanced understanding of the connections between matter, energy, and consciousness. But why? Jiho asked. Why create all this? Why put yourselves through such trials? Cathara paused at a vast window that looked out over the transformed landscape of Cathara's interior. Here, the deadly world had been tamed into something magnificent, still. Challenging, still dangerous, but beautiful and alive in ways that safe worlds could never achieve. Because growth requires resistance, she said. Strength requires challenge. Evolution requires pressure. The galaxy is full of species that have forgotten this truth. They create comfortable bubbles and live quiet lives and slowly fade into extinction without ever realizing their potential. And you want to change that? We want to offer choice. The choice to remain safe and comfortable and limited, or to face trials that will transform you into something magnificent. Cathara turned to face the humans directly. You have already made your choice by coming here. The question now is what you will do with what you have learned. Nara was practically vibrating with excitement. You could teach us. Show us how to help other species the way you helped us. We could, Cathara agreed. But first you must decide what you will tell your people when you return home. Will you speak of Cathara as a death world to be avoided? Or will you reveal it as an opportunity for transformation? The weight of the decision settled on the 5 humans like gravity from a massive star. They had come to explore an unknown planet, and found instead a chance to reshape the future of conscious life in the galaxy. The choice they made would determine not just their own fates, but the evolutionary path of every species willing to take the risks necessary for transcendence. In the growing light of the transformed mountain, 5 humans stood at a crossroads, between safety and possibility, between comfort and greatness, between what they had been and what they might become. The Kethmori waited patiently for their answer, as they had waited for thousands of years for someone capable of walking their path. Around them, Cathara itself seemed to pause in anticipation of the choice that would determine the galaxy's future. The humans spent 3 days in the transformed mountain, learning from Cathara and the other evolved Kethmori. They saw technologies that seemed like magic, witnessed art that rewrote the laws of physics, and experienced forms of consciousness that expanded their understanding of what it meant to be alive. But most importantly, they learned the truth about the galaxy's carefully maintained order. Every spacefaring civilization follows the same pattern, Cathara explained as they stood in a chamber that showed holographic records of 1,000 different species across galactic history. Exploration, expansion, technological advancement, social stability, and then stagnation. The displays showed species after species reaching peaks of achievement and then slowly declining, not from war or disaster, but from the simple fact that they had eliminated all challenges from their lives. They create perfect worlds where nothing can hurt them, Cathera continued. Perfect technologies that solve every problem. Perfect societies where conflict is impossible. And in doing so, they create perfect conditions for evolutionary death. But you found a different path, Jiho said. We discovered that consciousness itself is not a destination but a journey. The moment you stop growing, you start dying, even if your body continues to function for another 1,000 years. Cathera gestured to the evolved Kethmori around them. We chose to keep growing no matter the cost. Nara studied the genetic and consciousness mapping data the Kethmori had shared. The transformation is not just physical. You have integrated technology with biology, individual minds with collective awareness, matter with energy. You have become something entirely new. As have you, Taiyang observed quietly. We are not the same people who crashed here 6 weeks ago. He was right. The changes had been gradual but profound. They moved faster, thought clearer, and worked together with coordination that seemed impossible for 5 individuals. Their bodies had adapted to Cathera's hostile environment, but their minds had adapted to something even more challenging, unlimited possibility. The question, Cathera said, is what you will do with your transformation when you return to your people. Suman had been silent throughout much of their education, processing the implications with her strategic mind. Now she spoke with the careful precision of someone who understood the weight of their situation. If we tell the truth about Cathara, everything changes, not just for humans but for every species in the galaxy. Those who are brave enough to attempt the trials will be transformed. Those who are not will be left behind. And that bothers you? Cathera asked. It should bother all of us, Suman replied. We are talking about dividing the galaxy into those who choose growth through hardship and those who choose safety through limitation. The consequences will last for millions of years. Deho nodded agreement. But if we lie, if we report Cathara as simply uninhabitable, we deny every species the chance to choose their own evolutionary path. We make the decision for them based on our own fears about what they might choose. The debate continued for hours. Each team member wrestled with the moral implications of their discovery. They had found something that could elevate conscious life to heights previously unimaginable, but only through trials that would destroy anyone not ready for such elevation. Finally, Jiho called for a decision. As captain, the final choice was his, but he wanted to hear from each team member first. Taiyang? The medic spoke thoughtfully. I became a doctor to help people become healthier, stronger, better than they were. This is the ultimate medicine, not just healing disease, but transcending the limitations that create disease in the first place. We have an obligation to share it. Deho, I have seen what we can become. The technology, the integration of systems, the pure efficiency of evolved consciousness working in harmony. If we keep this secret, we are stealing the future from our own species and every other species capable of growth. Nara? The xenobiologist's answer was immediate. Knowledge belongs to everyone capable of understanding it. We do not have the right to hide discoveries that could transform life itself. Suman? The security specialist was quiet for a long moment. This will cause conflict. Species will divide into those who attempt transformation and those who fear it. There will be war, chaos, probably the collapse of the current galactic order. She paused, then smiled grimly. But the current galactic order is a slow death sentence. Anyway, at least this way some will choose to truly live. All eyes turned to Jiho. The captain looked at his transformed team, then at Cathera and the other evolved beings who had created this opportunity for transcendence. When we left Earth, he said slowly, we promised to find humanity's place among the stars. I thought that meant finding planets to colonize or trading partners or new technologies to bring home. He gestured to the vast chamber around them. I never imagined we would find a path to become something greater than human while remaining essentially human. He stood straighter, decision made. We tell the truth. All of it. We let every species choose their own path, even if some of those paths lead to failure. Cathara nodded with approval that seemed to make the chamber itself glow brighter. Then you are ready for the final gift. She led them to a crystalline structure at the heart of the mountain, a living computer that contained the complete knowledge of how to create worlds like Cathara, how to design trials that would transform rather than simply destroy, and how to guide species through the dangerous process of evolutionary transcendence. This is the template, she explained. Everything we learned about transformation, adaptation, and growth. Take it back to your people. Share it with any who prove ready for such knowledge. The return journey to their ship took only 2 days. The Keithmori had provided them with transportation that moved through Kithara's dangers like a fish through water, swift, efficient, and completely in harmony with the hostile environment. The Resilience had been repaired and upgraded during their absence, transformed from a simple exploration vessel into something that could travel safely between worlds while carrying the most dangerous and valuable cargo in galactic history. As they prepared for departure, Jiho took one last look at Cathara through the ship's viewports. It no longer looked like a Deathworld to him. It looked like a school, a forge, a place where the possible became actual through courage and determination. The journey back to the Galactic Council station took 3 weeks. During that time, the team prepared their report, knowing that every word would be scrutinized and that their choices would reshape the future of civilized space. When the Resilience docked at the Council station, Vextai and the other Council members were waiting with rescue ships and medical teams. They had expected to find survivors traumatized by their ordeal on the galaxy's most dangerous world. Instead, they found 5 humans who moved with fluid grace, spoke with quiet confidence, and radiated an energy that made everyone around them feel more alive just by proximity. Report, Vextai requested, trying to hide his amazement at their obvious health and vitality. Jiho smiled with the expression of someone who had seen wonders beyond description and chosen to share them rather than hoard them. Kithara is habitable, he said simply, for those willing to earn it. As word of their discovery spread through the galaxy, reactions varied wildly. Some species recoiled in horror at the implications. Others began quietly preparing their own expeditions. A few, recognizing the opportunity for what it truly was, immediately began the political and social preparations necessary for species-wide transformation. But the most significant reaction came from Earth itself. Within days of receiving the full report, recruitment stations opened in every major human city. The signs were simple. Volunteers wanted for the Cathara initiative. Not everyone will survive. Those who do will become something more than human. The line stretched around city blocks. 6 months later, the first wave of human volunteers arrived at Cathara in a fleet of specially designed ships. Leading them was Nara, now bearing the subtle modifications that marked her as one of the transformed. Her message to the galaxy was broadcast on all frequencies. The universe does not care if you are ready. It only cares if you are willing to become ready. For those who choose growth over safety, challenge over comfort, and possibility over certainty, we will see you among the stars. And in the depths of space, other species heard that message and began to make their own preparations for transformation. The galaxy's long age of comfortable stagnation was ending. The age of conscious evolution had begun. The 5 humans who had volunteered for an impossible mission had done more than survive a Class 15 Deathworld. They had opened a door to the future that could never be closed again.